Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Sue. Good afternoon, everyone. As they say, it takes a village. Today, there's over 300 senior executives from the industry showing up, and we all know how important it is to do so because that's the way that we impact change in our industry. And it also takes a lot of resources. So I want to take this opportunity, and over here alone, you had two visionary sponsors in Lisa Torres at Publicis and Rachel Chang at Verizon. And we had a wonderful supporter with Edna Kane Williams at AARP supporting this event. And of course, Sue Sims, who has been one of our AIM leaders almost since inception with Kellogg. So we take this opportunity to really thank them. Can we have a round of applause for them? And now I'm going to be introducing the next panel, which is for the Black segment, Challenges and Opportunities. And we're going to begin to set up the stage, and then I'm going to be introducing the moderator with a couple of great statistics. We could put them on the board, and I want to take also this opportunity. Oh, the clicker. There you go. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Nielsen, because they have provided and they have done all kinds of studies and research on this space. And throughout the day, you're going to be seeing some of the key statistics that we have drawn from all of those researchers as a, quite frankly, trusted source of information and an amazing ANA AIM supporter. And we really start by something that, might surprise you. 58% of Black audiences said it is important to seek out diverse owned media. So this is not only the marketplace saying the importance of, but also the consumers have a greater understanding on the importance of these minority and diverse owned media and what they do and how they connect with their consumers and community. Black-owned radio reaches 11.5 million people a week. That delivers about a third of the total reach among Black listeners every week. That is an outstanding statistic. And the power that these Black-owned radio stations that are so entrenched in the communities that they serve really have an amazing audience. 56% of Black people trust perspectives and programming from diverse owned media offers for the same reasons. They are in those communities. Doesn't mean that they're all small. There's many large ones as well that have a very vast reach. But again, day in and day out are making cultural connections with the communities that they serve. And then finally, 59% of Black viewers are more likely to buy brands that feature someone from their identity group in advertising. That is something that we have a lot of knowledge of, and it certainly reiterates one of the reasons that we are here. While only 1/3 of targeted campaigns tested with Nielsen featured Black talent in their creative. So yes, we all know that casting and talent is one function, but by far not the only one. Certainly making those cultural connections is really principal to this. And with that in mind, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the moderator for this important session. And apologies, but this individual has like 4 titles, okay? And so please bear with me as I introduce. First of all, yes, I'm going to do it because you deserve it. Ladies and gentlemen, her first title is an industry icon, okay? And she does have a title, and the title is Chief Inclusion and Experience Officer at Publicis Group. She has another title, which is she is one of our lead DEIB track chair at AIM. And last but not least, she is going to be in April inducted into the American Advertising Federation AAF Hall of Fame. Ladies, can we hear it? Can we hear it? So there it is. Now you can come up, ladies and gentlemen, Renetta McCann.
Thank you, sir. Okay. All right. All right. Good afternoon, or good morning still. And if I could have my panelists come up. So Davon, Bree, Carell, Dean, and Royal, please join me on stage. We have been having a delightful conversation in the green room, and we're now going to bring that conversation out here for all of you.
Hey, hey.
All right. So thank you all for being with me today. And I'm just going to open up, and like I said, we're going to have this conversation. So we all agree there hasn't been enough progress in the diverse-owned targeted media space. How would you suggest that the industry move forward in a way that will make a meaningful difference? So who wants to start off?
I'd like to start.
All right,
Hey everyone,
let's go, Royal.
Royal Jackson, Impact Network, linear platform. Well, we just have to start, to be honest with you all. We have to really get started with this opportunity. There's been a lot, of course, ramp up in conversations. And what we're finding that's happening is there's a lot of stipulations and standards in the marketplace that a lot of our networks phase. They say we want to invest, but however, those stipulations keep the investment from happening. Ratings, other aspects like that, we have to think like investors, angel investors. That's really what we're asking you guys to do. We say this is an investment, but the question is, are we thinking with an investment mindset and how these properties can grow? And so I just think us beginning is the way to begin.
Yeah, I'll just add that, putting action behind words, I think, I spent the past almost 3 years, especially since 2020, racial reckoning, George Floyd, et cetera, hearing that diversity matters, hearing that we want to do more, we want to engage more, but we're kind of trying to play by the same old rules, but yet you want new outcomes. So if you want a new outcome and we're offering new opportunities, then understand that we're offering new opportunities and take that chance for something new.
And I think one of the great ways of putting action behind it, as you said, right? The commitments have been there, but we need to see more action, right? So when you're developing your marketing plans, when you're sending out media plans or RFPs, requiring that diverse-owned media, Black-owned media goes on every single RFP and media plan is a great action step.
Yeah, I think also when we talk about the process, timing. So for me, I sit on a Revolt internal agency. So we build.
They're like lights.
Yep. So those are the two challenges that we're facing with the API community.
someone
So
else is speaking.
an interesting conversation that
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, we've totally lost our sound. Okay. I don't know what happened there.
Brought up.
I'll project.
Bree, are you channeling something?
I know, she was like,
My internal.
Yeah.
But even you mentioned RFP, right?
Yeah.
Bringing us on as early as possible, right? Like taking out some of those barriers of working in a silo or in vacuum or even being an afterthought. So a lot of times we find that we are, minority-owned, Black-owned media. We get the RFP on the tail end of the cycle where it's like we need this idea in a week. And then I think the other side of it is what we've been able to do. What we try to do is we try to say, like, let us talk directly to you, because you guys are coming to us with a need, a business need, or desire to build and engage with an audience that we know better than anybody. And we can really, if we're talking about going deep and impact-driven work, we can customize those together and come to you with our audience insights and learnings. And I think Brianne said it beautifully when she was talking about metrics and engagement, is like, don't give us those cookie cutter approaches that you're going to just throw out there to the universe. Really trust us and let us help you, drive those plans.
If I can add one more thing, because you mentioned the RFP process, right? And I think that there's a macro issue here that needs to be addressed, which is the RFP process in general. I think it needs to be torn down and rebuilt again. No, seriously, because our buying habits, the way we've been going about things, is really it's old school, and there's a lot of legacy in it, which hurts every business up here and every business that's out in the hallway holding meetings today, right? And so when you talk about receiving them last minute, right, that's always been a thing in the space, right? But when you talk about Black-owned media companies that are small and growing, we don't necessarily have the resources to drop everything and respond to RFPs that last second that you may not get, right? So that's one thing, right? Two, when we've seen it ourselves, when we don't make it on an RFP, we rarely get the feedback to understand why we weren't included on the RFP. It's always, oh, the client decided to go in another direction, or something to that effect. So there's a lot of inherent biases within the entire buying process that I think needs to be torn down and rebuilt again.
Or small tactical things that we could have overcome. Like
Yeah.
that was part of the idea. We would have worked with you on that.
So Dean, I know you're interested in macro issues. Jump in here.
Yeah. I'm with the Africa Channel. We're one of the longest running minority-owned networks dedicated to showcasing global Black perspectives to U.S. audiences. We've always been kind of looked at as a niche within a niche, right? And that's hurt us in terms of carriage, in terms of increasing that reach. Only recently, in the last 2 years, have we been able to triple our reach, and a lot of times that's coming in at the expense of carriage fees. So for somebody like us, the investment we need is a commitment. We need to know that you're going to show up, not just this quarter, that you're going to be here next quarter and the quarter after, and then we can start actually looking across our business and being like, okay, you want us rated, you want digital, you want this. On the FAST side, 98% of inventory is controlled by OEMs and a handful of platforms. We're all those places. We don't own that inventory. I can't really sell it to you. So you coming to me wanting to buy digital doesn't help me. So I think in general, sort of listening, having conversations with people individually, not looking at the black market as a monolith or just a bucket, and having that conversation that says, okay, where are you at? How can we work together to meet you where you're at and grow you to where you need to be? So I think that's kind of the thing that's missing is I heard there's some economic empowerment conversations happening, and then there's old school targeting measurement, and somehow we started mingling those two. And I think it's a challenge to have both of those conversations and try to grow, especially when we've been coming from a place of scarcity for so long that any support that we've gotten recently, which is great, and we're so thankful for it, it's taking those steps, pulling the trigger on hiring this new person or that person, or growing this business segment, knowing that you all are going to show up and be with us for that ride. As an investor, that's not looking for that immediate return on that investment.
Go ahead.
And to Dean's point, the black audience is not monolithic. We're not all the same. We have to look at the nuances in the subsets of each demographic. You know, where I come from is maybe different from where you come from. The mindset is, so we talk about duplication within the marketplace. Well, I'm getting it on the general market advertising. But if we had more openings for more diverse, I'm not saying diverse from a race perspective, but more from a mindset, psychological, lifestyle perspective, it continues to drill down within the vertical itself. You would see less duplication. You would see it because people would be going to media that's targeted for what narrative that they actually want to seek. I think the internet has done a great job where you see diversity within the vertical, but TV has not done it yet. And that's because access. Anyone can get online and get the phone and share their voice. However, TV has a very closed door system. And so if more voices were amplified in different ways, you would be able to see those duplication problems come down, as well as, once again, authentic partnerships, as Dean said, with the investments.
Yeah, and I don't know if I said it right, but listening is on both sides, right? Like, I want to sit there and listen and better understand your business and how we can help. So part of when all of a sudden, RFPs come, we're like, what do we do? Because it's not something we've been used to. So really opening up that dialogue and having those conversations is really kind of where we're at. And I think so I'm not just saying you need to listen. I'm saying we both need to listen.
Okay. Dave?
Yeah, I think it's important to work with all of us. I think what's insulting is that when I have meetings, I'm massive about Group Black, and Group Black's amazing and wonderful, but I have orange shoes. They do not. You can work with both of us, right? So I think that's the sort of thing that we have to lean into. It's like we don't make the larger or general market media outlets, compete for each other. They both get the business. So why aren't all of us getting the business from you guys, the buyers? I think you shouldn't be choosing one.
Yep.
I didn't know
We can
response,
talk
but
about
yeah.
we can talk about sneakers later.
Yeah, I mean, no. I'm sorry I threw you under the bus, but yeah.
Okay, all right. So when it comes to diverse-owned targeted media, the majority of dollars are going to Black segments, yet it is not enough to allow you to grow your companies, hire staff, and be strategic about your next steps. So what's happening and what can be done differently to support Black-owned targeted media?
I mean, I think we
I
kind of talked about it.
jumped on that, didn't I? Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's about, like, don't be so transactional or short-term relationships. It's like, what's the long-term goal, and really establishing deep relationships, multi-year. It allows us all to obviously have the foresight, understand how to staff, how to navigate, but also learn, right? And it also allows us to build together. And so some of, Revolt's branded partnerships that really made an impact were, like for the Target deal, we're going into season 3 of Bet on Black, which it really came from an idea of they wanted to do something. And if you could maybe look at maybe all of Revolt's programming, you may say, oh, there's brand safety stuff, or we've got talent, or whatnot. And that's not the case, right? If you talk to us and you're able to strategize with us, we're able to really carve out the content that makes sense. And Target came to us, and we're going to 3 years. And Bet on Black is this program where it's all about, it's kind of like a Shark Tank-esque without the sharks, right? So they've spotlight Black-owned founders in startup space. We all know they get less than 1% of VC funding. You give them a platform to tell them, their businesses and what they're doing and the impact that they're doing. And then every founder on the show walked away with a grant, essentially, which was a surprise. Not just the winner, it was no competition. And from a media perspective, we were able to, yes, we did production and casting and tell these stories on the local level. But for TRT, this is 30-minute programming that you have for the season. And so if you're RFPing it or you're thinking about, this quarter, you actually lose out on the opportunity to generate a core audience and have real, tangible impact on communities and pour into Black businesses, Black content creators, and storytellers. But if you're thinking short term with, these big goals, you miss out on that.
Yeah, it's definitely an integrated approach. Going beyond just the spots and really thinking about investing in an ecosystem. When we here, even at Impact, we're looking at how do we reinvest back into financial literacy programs? How do we reinvest back into educational programs? Black creators, creating a pipeline on camera, off camera, in the boardroom, even when it comes down to our PR agents. It's like the money that you guys put into these companies is not just what happens on screen, but it spills out into real life change, real life impact. And it's important. We're counting on you guys to help us grow and to help us gauge in this space and to be able to reinvest back into our communities in ways that are meaningful.
To double click on that, I think we do need to be honest. The industry itself ignored Black-owned media for a very long time, for decades. So we are starting at, 100 yards behind the rest of the industry. So we need to also be honest. You talked about being honest both ways conversation. We've been excluded, right? So we've done a lot of amazing stuff with very little resources. And when we did get budget, it was a crumbs on the table. And what we're asking for you guys to do now is recognize what we've done with crumbs and how amazing it looks. We get applause, you love our content, it's great. But we did it with scraps. Imagine what we can do if you actually gave us budget. I want to be here next year, not fighting for 2% of your budget. I want the 98%. I want to go for the larger budget. I don't want to be stuck in this here's your 2% earmark for diversity. I want to be competing with the big guys, but I can't get there if we don't make right what was done wrong before.
Yeah.
I did not expect to let all that out.
Well, if I can add to that, Citi came out, I think, with a study 2 years ago where they looked at the cost of discrimination in the U.S. over the last 20 years, right? And it looked at, lack of funding to businesses. It looked at lack of access to education, lack of funding for housing, so on and so forth. And the cost was $16 trillion over a 20-year period, right? We're all sitting in this room and we all know what inflation is doing to our pockets today and everything else. Imagine if we were able to pump $16 trillion over the last 20 years back into the US economy, right? Now take that back to Black-owned media companies, right? Imagine what that means to the media ecosystem if Black-owned media companies, diverse-owned media companies were on the same level playing field as everyone else.
Yeah, and even the intellectual property, aspect. If you can't own your voice, and media is really much like a mirror. So if you can't own your voice and you can't reinvest that intellectual property back and the money that comes from it, it's like we're really outsourcing culture, our culture, most likely, in most cases, should I say. And so being able to really, as you mentioned, play at scale is what we're looking to do. But we have to crawl before we walk, and we have to walk before we run, we have to run before we fly. And these investments are very important that allow us to really get on our feet, because the question was about how do we go forward? How can we count on the dollars? How can we have long-term relationships? We need to be able to count on that money to be able to plan forward and to create a better business and be a better product for all the brands that you guys are placing on our networks.
Yeah, and I think for us too, I always ask, well, what is the relationship you want to have with our audience? And I feel like if you start there, then we can figure out how we can back that out. And then allowing your Black media companies, partners, to actually guide you on benchmarking, right? So how are you coming to us with expectations or goals or what success is, and you don't know the audience as intimately as us, and you don't know how consumers are moving, and you don't know what it is. And I think if you are coming in with pure, real intentionality to make an impact, to grow, to reach, to uplift, to have impact-driven work, you actually also have to look at your Black media partners as a true partner and a guide to do that. Allow them to push back. Allow them to tell you what does success look in our world, because we know them better than anybody.
All right. So I'm going to sneak in one more of my questions, and then we're going to go to the audience questions. And thank you for those who have submitted. And remember, you can submit additional questions. So what else should we know? And I think this conversation has already been going there. But what else should we know about the opportunities or potential of building or supporting diverse-owned targeted media content creators or audiences? So any one of those realms. What else do people really need to deeply understand?
I think one of the presenters earlier today talked about it, is that our media, our audience, our content performs just as well, if not better, than anything else you're buying right now.
Did you all hear that? All right. All right. Any other opportunities?
Once again, going beyond the spots. I mean, there's ways that we want to really create true partnerships with the brands and be able to do things that maybe are non-traditional. The spots can always be integrated, of course, into the overall opportunity. However, like Revolt, Bet on Black, like that's a series. Like, how do we get into content? You think about the word production, the word product is in production, right? And in TV, that is the product. And if you come to these networks and you turn on the channel and there's not enough product, and it's like going into a grocery store and the shelves are empty. And so being able to invest in the content and other sides of the business, because it's a very integrative, media is such an integrative space. And we have to be able to fund each side of the space, from the staffing to the sales to the infrastructure, to make sure that we are creating a great brand experience for the clients, to the content and the viewership, and scaling that content and promoting it as well. Because they say often, you can't wink in the dark. If we're all winking in the dark, say, hey, I know you're here, no one can see you. We have to be able to scale in those sorts of ways and think about this from more of a partnership and an investment mindset.
And I'll just add that where I sit, Black content is general content, it's world content. We are, the catalysts, curators, cultivators of pop, any sort of culture globally. We've got some content that we look at it's like on a small segment, but our Carisha Please show is bringing global viewership, and that's all about the creators. And so how are we circulating dollars beyond just who we have on screen, but like putting money in the pocket of those that are actually creating Black producers, Black vendors, writers, and putting that on a, like, just a main stage.
Okay. So I'm going to start with question number one, because, well, the first one at the top. So if each of you had one ask of the audience today, what would it be? And since this is an audience question, they really do want to know what you want to ask them.
Yeah,
So.
I can jump in. I say this all the time on the panel. I say, and also, right? You already know what you're working on already. You know where some of your money's going, but there's also room to do more. So if you decided before you came in this room who you're gonna meet with, who you're gonna work with, how much money you're gonna spend. But there's always a little bit more budget left. I know that for sure, because I've gotten some of the leftover money. So with that, and also, who can you add to your plan for this year? I'm one of those people. There's 4 more on this panel, and also, that's it.
Continuity, we have great panels, we have great discussions, but what happens in implementation? Once we know that you guys may be up against various gatekeeping within your agencies and buying and the clients, but just kind of aligning the intention with action and then implementation and continuity throughout time to say, hey, we're building a real relationship. It's not just a box that you're checking off, but we really want to create a relationship with you for the long run.
And be a champion for, if you're here to listen, take that back to your company.
Yes.
Spread that message and be a champion for it within those walls. That would be great.
Okay. I'm going to go to, oh, wow. Whoa, we were almost down to like a few questions, and then they all just popped up. Thank you all for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the second and third one. So one of the questions is, starting from scratch, what do you envision an equitable RFP containing? And then there's a companion question, what is one factor in the RFP that is non-value added? So panelists, answer either one of those 2 questions, whichever one interests you.
Go ahead.
I mean,
Back there. Go ahead.
look, the biggest thing for us is knowing what box to respond in, I guess, is kind of the thing. Like when you send an RFP, I got an RFP that's so broad, and I was like trying to fill it out, and I'm doing it, and I don't have a ton of time. So it's just like really kind of narrowing it down. Like, let me know what the budget's like. Is there a target we're looking to hit? How can I help you spend that money in the most flexible but authentically get you engaged with the content, get you billboards, get you sponsored promos, like figure that piece out and really kind of bring what we have to the table and know what realm we're working in, so we're not like $1 gajillion to do 65 things,
Yeah, if I can just add on to that, just greater context, and sometimes a 5-10 minute conversation over the phone can provide that, right? And to your point earlier, the listening happening on both sides, that's a great place to start.
GM did something really great. They did an RFI process. I also co-founded BOMISI, which is Black Owned Media Equity Sustainability Institute, and we work with them to identify, I think, 120 new Black owned media outlets that they may or may not have done business with, but they didn't have to waste time on 100 different RFPs. They did a short form RFI, and that was really amazing. I did one, they didn't choose me to spend money with me, but it was okay because I didn't waste a bunch of time in an RFP, and they also gave me 15-minute office hours to find out what in my RFI was not aligned with what they wanted for their plan, and gave me a chance to either modify it, resubmit, or come back next year and do it. So I think that's a step that I think most agencies and brands can take right now on an RFP process. Maybe do a short form RFI. Know who I am first before we waste anyone's time on a large RFP, and you may not choose us anyway.
I would echo, GM and Dentsu, they've done a lot of work, like a lot of work, and it's really appreciative, and they've really taken the time to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, nice, thank you. A little moderator interjection, just listening to the panel, what I'd say about the RFP is that there may be an inherent tension between the bidding aspect of that RFP and the partnership aspect of that. And that if the RFP is driving you more to the bidding side, that's probably not as helpful to this part of our ecosystem. So I'll go to the third one. How can agencies help the narrative that specific media investment in your property goes beyond media and does circulate? Now it's the third one. Keep them questions coming.
I think agencies, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but I'm just super passionate about this, but we need more diversity in your buying teams. I think to find me relevant or important, you have to know who I am and where I come from, and I have to be reflected in that. And most buying teams, you know, you guys probably have a D&I person, but they're not on your buying team. So it's great for like advocacy, but I need people that can actually cut checks or approve budgets. So I think an agency can start with the hiring of more diverse media planners.
I think also to that too, we've started to kind of like do a temperature check of like what's not working. So if you guys ever do a rap report with us, yes, we'll answer your questions on how something ran. But I'm also gonna give you the context, the the insights, information that you did not ask for, and we're purposely putting that in deck so that you guys can be armed with the right language, the right narrative, the right tidbits of what contextually was successful. We did a show with Killer Mike. We went to his show, to his studio to talk about generational wealth, and you know, starting from his family, from farmers, and you know, the lineage that Black people actually are just now probably talking in a real way because it just was so unattainable for us. And when we got there, we are so excited to be there, right? He literally looks at us, and he was floored that he's never seen all Black crews, production, people, and asked to take a picture of us. I mean, so he can promote, because in his years, it just, you know, like you said, it's a mirror, but not a window. And I think that when these are the tidbits that we would put in our rap report, these are the things that you need to take back to your brands when they're spending money, that, you know, what the impact is. And yes, it's dollars, sometimes it's reach, sometimes it's more than that.
And we're willing, it's not just what we're asking you to do, we're also willing to showcase these case studies in such a way that we collect the work that's been done, even as I know it mentioned beyond the media investment alone. Impact, once again, we're going in and we're going into the community and we're creating different programs that are gonna reach the community in very real ways. And so showcasing that, putting together reels, putting together decks, putting together things that you can then take back to your company and see the integrity, and also be able to say, okay, where our money went, it actually was spent in a way that was reflective of the impact that we want to make as a brand.
Okay, so I'm going to actually leave on a controversial note. So it's the bottom question. What is your point of view on how programmatic has hurt the diverse and targeted owned space? Anybody want to go there?
I mean, it's dramatically hurt it, right? I mean, if you think about programmatic buying and how some brands choose to block certain words or phrases, right, that are culturally relevant to the Black community, right? So I've seen examples where a brand was blocking Black Lives Matter, right? How do you expect to spend money with Black-owned media, local Black news organizations, when that's a term that you're blocking? Another culturally relevant term, the term slay, right? That means something very, you know, positive to our community, right? It's not murder, right? So those are just two of many examples where, you know, blocking certain terms have hurt Black-owned media.
Yeah, and programmatic kind of loses sight of the audience themselves, because you're starting to get into just buying across the board, but yet you're not taking into consideration who that audience and who that viewer is. And so context matters, and you lose a lot of context through that buying method.
All right. Well, I would like you to join me in giving a round of applause to this fantastic panel. I I wish they'd give us another 30 minutes, but they haven't. So thank you all for
Thank
being
you.
here
Thank you all
today.
for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
You guys want to take a quick picture?
Yeah.